guys, Will Terry here, and this video is going to be called Make Projects Instead of Portfolios. And before I get going, I have a few announcements. We are starting to ship the little book. So that should be going out this week to some people, not all. And that's a long story. Maybe I'll talk at the end on why they're not all going out this week. But anyway, so a lot of people have said after the Kickstarter ended that they wanted to get the book. How can I still get the book? Okay. Until the end of this month, until the end of October 2016, if you've come to this video afterwards, I'm really sorry. You can still get the book. Okay. Go to my website at willterry.com. That's www.willterry.com. I linked it below in the description. And you can still order a book up until November 1st. And November 1st, we're cutting it off. And I will not be shipping any books after that date. So for all the people who said, I needed to get a book, I wanted to get a book, this is your last chance to get one unless you see me at a show. The reason for that is we're selling them really, really well at shows. And I'm going to be talking about the little book I'm going to be talking about it as part of this video. So I'll show some video about the book and stuff like that further on. I don't want to spend too much time on that right now. So anyway, let's jump into this topic. This one is definitely inspired by my business partner, Jake Parker, business partner in svslearn.com. And he actually made a video on this. I'll link his so you can look at his as well. We talk a lot about the same ideas, and this is one that I've wanted to talk about for a while. And so what kind of inspired me to talk about this on this video was actually an email that I got this week from a guy named Lawrence, and I'll read a little bit of the email. I'm an illustrator based in New York. First, I'd like to say that I admire your work. Okay, thank you very much. Follow you on Instagram and YouTube. Wanted to ask you for some advice about my work. Graduated the school, and then I'm not going to read the school. I don't like to give personal information, but from a really, really good art school with a bachelor's degree in illustration this past May. I've been interning at Blank Magazine located in New York as well. They are looking to hire me part-time as an in-house illustrator next month, sort of beginning pay rate. I'm struggling with getting freelance work though. I was wondering if there are any pointers in my work that could possibly be holding me back, sort of stump. Thanks for your time. Look forward to hearing. Okay, so great. Thank you, Lawrence. And the best response I can give, short of, I don't do portfolio reviews because I get asked to do portfolio reviews all the time. And if I review some people's and not others, then it could create a problem. I used to do that a lot more. We do that at svslearn.com. We're going to be doing that more. If you haven't checked this out, we have forums. You can get to know people there on what we're doing there and some of the projects and some of the classes that we have. But anyway, without looking at your work, because there's really two parts, and you're right. The work is one side of it. You've got to have good work. But the other side of it is you have to attract the right people that want to hire you and give them reasons to hire you. I want to talk about more on that side, assuming that you have good work. So let's talk about it. Make projects instead of portfolios. So we've all been taught, if we've gone to art school, if we've gone to university, college, if we went through high school, art school, whatever, that you got to have a good portfolio. And that is true. You need to have a good portfolio. So I am making this video. I don't want to get a whole bunch of comments from people going, well, how can we not have a good portfolio? I'm not saying you shouldn't have a portfolio, but what most people do, I think, is they spend time making a portfolio, and then their whole focus is on, well, if my portfolio is just good enough, I will get the work, and constantly trying to make the portfolio better. And you should be doing that. So this video maybe a better title would be Make Projects on top of making your portfolio. If you didn't already have enough to do, here's some more work to do. I would say making projects will also increase your portfolio at the same time. So there you go. We have all been programmed to want to get hired. the reason we want to get hired is because when we get hired, people will pay us money. When people pay us money, we get to pay our bills. When we get to pay our bills, and we get to live. And so we need money to live, and so that's what we want. And when we're hired, we feel safe. When we're hired, we feel like, hey, we're doing something right. Somebody out there trusts me enough to hire me. I can take that to my family and say, see, you guys thought I was going to fail as an artist. Well, in your face, right? It really is that kind of a defining thing for many people is if someone else is willing to pay me money for art, then I'm all of a sudden catapulted into this professional realm, and now I'm a professional. The sad reality is multifaceted, and one of them is that just because you're hired doesn't mean you'll always be hired. I could talk to you for hours on that subject alone, but maybe I'll digress just a little bit into that. Back in 2000, in the late 90s, late 90s to 2001, for about 4 years, illustration to me was the easiest thing in the world, and my work was horrible compared to the way it is now, and yet I was making over six figures every year for 4 years straight, doing editorial work for magazines. I was doing so much work that I started keeping track of how much I was turning down, and I kept a calendar right next to my desk. And one of those years, the year that I kept a calendar, I wrote down every time I turned down a job because I just had too much. I was averaging 15 to 20 illustration jobs a month, and I was still turning down all this work. And I turned down $70,000 worth of work. So if I could have worked faster, I could have made close to $200,000, probably right at $200,000 that year. And that would have been 90, I believe that was 98. And I mean, if you had asked me then what I would be doing now, I would tell you that I would be doing the exact same thing. Because when we're hired, when we're living our life today, right now, in this moment, we tend to think that this is how it's going to be next year and the year after and the year after, right? And so back then, the Will Terry back then, if you'd asked me, well, what are you going to be doing in 10 years? I'd be like, making $100,000 a year illustrating for magazines. Well, magazines are gone, okay, for the most part. They're mostly gone. I mean, that was such a vibrant area for illustrators to make money, a market, and it fed so many. It was, I mean, it's hard to know how big it was, but it was hard for me to find an illustrator, even in children's books or advertising, that didn't also do editorial work, magazine work, or completely magazine work, or at least started there. It was a great place to get work. Anyway, gone. So I defined myself as I illustrate for magazines. When that ended, when I stopped getting hired because those magazines started to fold and go belly up, did I cease being a magazine illustrator? Did I cease being a professional at that time when my income started to take a real dive, No. I was the same illustrator. And I guess what I'm saying in a long roundabout way is that your job should not define you, should not tell you who you are, or give you the kind of validation. It's hard to divorce yourself from that because it does make you feel good when someone says, hey, I'm going to give you this pile of money if you draw something for me. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It feels pretty good. But at the same time, there are a lot of there are roads paved with broken illustrators who are doing something completely different now, who never recovered from that, who were editorial illustrators and now they're bank tellers or something like that. They're doing something totally different. I have a lot of friends, and I've mentioned this before on this vlog, that worked for Disney Avalanche out here in Salt Lake, and a few months ago they closed shop and they let go 300 employees. Well, those animators and those artists, their skills didn't stop just because they didn't have a job anymore. But prior to that, I'm sure a lot of them define themselves as, hey, I work for Disney. I'm a Disney animator. That's what I do. And they could go around, and if anybody asked them what they did, they could say, oh, I'm a Disney animator. And right away, they would get clout in the circles they were in. Wow, so you're the one, what project are you working on? I can't tell you, it's secret, And so that's how we've been programmed. We've gone to a school system that has told us that's the way it's supposed to be. So it's very natural for us to want to be hired. It's very natural for us to want that as the defining factor of success. And again, that's where the money comes from. The reason for projects instead of portfolios, in a nutshell, I guess I could say, is that first and foremost, you need to be able to tell yourself and to make it okay with yourself that first and foremost, you're an artist. Okay, so that's what you are. You're an artist, and you create art. That's number one. So once you've decided that you're an artist, no matter who you're working for or who you're not working for or what projects you're working on, you're an artist. And that's what you are. Whether you work at Home Depot, whether you work at McDonald's, you're an artist that also works at McDonald's. The reason I say that is when you give yourself permission to define yourself as an artist, right? As this is the thing that I do. I think it takes pressure off yourself that says, well, I'm not getting hired, so I'm not really an artist. And I hear that from a lot of students a lot of the times. Well, someday when I'm an artist, I'm like, no, you're an artist now. Okay. But the idea behind creating a project, instead of saying, trying to constantly prepare yourself to being hired by someone else, is you're already working. Okay. There are a lot of entrepreneurs out there, and they're not hired, and they're working on a project that they're going to try to take to market. Right. And if someone asked them, well, who are you working for? They'd say, I work for myself. I'm making this project right now. I'm building this thing. I've gathered a team together, and it could be a huge project. It could be a medium-sized project. It could be small. It could be a tiny. It could be a micro. But whatever it is, those people they're not bothered by the fact that they're not hired by someone, that they're not employed. They're like, this is the thing that I'm working on, and this is what I'm excited about doing. And I'm really hoping that it'll be successful. And I've known a lot of people that have worked on projects, some big, small, medium, tiny. And a lot of times they don't go anywhere. And a lot of times they do go somewhere. But they've given themselves permission to define themselves as the creator of this project, right? So you have to realize, I think, too, that portfolios are a dime a dozen, right? That's what everybody has. That's what everybody's trying to shove in front of you as an art director. So that's the thing you're going to try to insulate yourself from. I don't need to see another portfolio. Why? Because there's 10 times as many of you as I have jobs to give out. In fact, there might be 100 times as many of you as I have jobs to give out. I'm always looking, and when I'm saying I'm saying I'm an art director right now. I'm always looking to hire someone, but I'm not necessarily looking right now, and you're being pushy trying to get your portfolio in front of me, right? The thing about having a project, right? And this is just a little short list, and this is why a project, I think, is better than a portfolio, is basically projects have a tendency to get noticed more than a portfolio, because hopefully your project is something new and fresh and original. Whereas a portfolio, it starts out the same. It starts out in a letter. It starts out, now because we're online, we're not really meeting art directors face to face anymore. You can't really separate yourself by creating this amazing box. That's what I used to do. I had these boxes made, handmade, that I would put my portfolio in, just so that when I took it to or shipped it out, it would stand out and it would look better than the other portfolios that were in there. You can't really do that anymore. We all have a website. We all have, we all have access to email and Twitter and Facebook, and so every artist kind of tends to seem the same. We all kind of want the same thing. We're all kind of pushing our stuff out there. If you share your portfolio on Facebook, a lot of times, unless the work is I mean, so amazing that no one can deny it, it's going to get ignored in a lot of ways because it's another art portfolio. It's another, I mean, and not to say that you shouldn't be sharing your art online and sharing your art like on Instagram and things like that, but a portfolio, it's really hard to get someone to look at a whole body of work, whereas a project, hopefully, again, if it's original and fresh and new, it's like, wow, look at this thing that this person is working on. So immediately it's more shareable. The thing that you're working on in your project should have more of a shareable capability. And when I say shareable, obviously I'm talking about social media, where people reblog, retweet, share on Facebook, share on Instagram. So it's more exciting to bring your project to my friends if I really am into your project, right? The other thing about a project is you can update it every week, every day, even every month. But as you're working on it, you can give regular updates. It's something to talk about. If you're adding new pieces to your portfolio, it's not really newsworthy to say, I added another piece to my portfolio. I added another piece. Here's another piece. When you do a project, it's like, I am 10% of the way finished. I just secured the funding. I just made the first round of sketches for this project. I just got the first prototype back. Whatever it is, but all the steps along the way. Now, remember I showed you the prototype? Well, now here is the first one that's been painted. Here's the first one and so it's more updatable, right? You constantly have more newsworthy information. The other thing about a portfolio, or I'm sorry, a project, I think, is that you can target specific groups of people with that project, right? So you fall into a certain camp as a person. Like there's certain things that you like to do, and certain things you're into. For example, I have a friend that's into toys, really into toys, and so one of his projects was sculpting this little set of toys. And that got people really excited that are into collectibles and toys and 3D stuff, right? Now, some people aren't into collecting. They're not into 3D stuff. They're not into toys, so they're going to ignore it. But that group is really going to be into that, right? Really going to be following into that. So that's another thing that you can target. Now, on the client side, and this is where it kind of comes around to actually getting work from getting hired, right? Because this is the second part of this is projects can lead to getting hired, right? So what does you making a project, and again, I'm assuming that it's a really good project, that people are falling in love with it, that people are sharing it, that people are talking about it on social media, right? So what does your project, the thing that you're working on, what does it say to potential clients? Because they're there, by the way. They're watching. They're on Twitter, they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, they're on Tumblr. And every time I talk to an art director, because I go to a lot of conventions, I go to a lot of SCBWI events, and whenever I go to dinner or meet an art director or get a chance to talk to him one-on-one, one of the questions I ask every single one of them is, are you constantly looking for new artists? And never do they ever say, nope, I've found all the artists that I've ever wanted to work with. Their art directors are often artists. Some of them actually have really thriving freelance careers as well. Some of them are working an art director job to help pay the bills, but they also get paid from doing freelance work, or they're working on their own project. They're artists. So art directors are artists. They love art. They're like you and me, where they always want to see new art. So they're never satisfied. They're always looking for new artists, and they're always thinking of that new project that they have in mind that they might be able to find a place for you if they like what they're seeing. And so because a project is more shareable than a portfolio, chances of art directors seeing your project are higher than seeing your portfolio, right? So when an art director happens on to the project that you're working on, one of the things it says to them is that you can start and finish a project. Well, that's huge, right? The fact that you have decided to do this thing on your own, that you've taken on all the work. Because quite frankly, when you're hired, when you're working for someone else, that's actually easy. You're a cog in the wheel. You're a part of the project. I mean, when I was working for magazines, the project was the magazine, right? When I work for children's books publishers, the project is the children's book. Do you know how many hands are involved in making that children's book? I mean, there are probably the people that touch or have something directly to do with the children's book I work on could number in the hundreds, and that might be underestimating it. From the graphic designer to the art director to the editor, I mean, those are the people that have the most to do with it. But then there's the sales team, there's the production team, there's the distribution. I mean, there's the printing. There's just so many things that when you're hired, you don't have to deal with anything. You get this little assignment, and you're given this little area of that project to work on, and that's, quite frankly, that's easy. And it's easy because the buck stops with them. It doesn't have to stop with you. You don't have to stay up late at night making phone calls to the printer, wondering why your proofs didn't get there. You don't have to worry about proofreading. And I mean, I could bore you with all the details, but I mean, there's so many things that you don't have to do. So when you're hired, when an art director sees your portfolio, or they realize that this person has worked a few jobs, that's not as impressive as someone who is starting to finish a project. So saying that you can start and finish something that's really tough, that tells the art director that you're not going to screw them over. And you'd be surprised how many times a project gets screwed up because the artist, for whatever reason, screwed up. I mean, there's a million reasons why they could. You would think that as hard as it is to get a job, that no one would screw up, yet people screw up. And when they screw up, it makes the art director look bad. It also says that you're highly motivated. If I were an art director and I were hiring someone and I saw a project that was to die for, I would say to myself, that person is someone that I want working for me, because I know that they're going to be excited about my project. And if they're not, they'll probably turn it down, because they're the type of person who is project oriented and who knows how to make something really good. And if they don't think that they're right for my project, hopefully they would turn it down. It says that you love what you do. It says that you're a leader. It takes a leader to start and finish a project. It says that you won't screw them over if they hire you. I already said that. It also says that you will share their project on social media. So if they found your project on social media, then they're going to assume, I would think, that when they hire you, you will share the project you're working on social media, which will create buzz, which will generate to sales, which will generate to dollars, right? It also says that other people value what you do. So if, as an art director, it's very hard for me to constantly trust my own instincts, right? I mean, I might like something, but maybe I'm weird, and maybe no one else likes this artist's work. Maybe I'm just the weirdo. But if I see your project being shared and loved by many online, that's excitement, that's buzz. I'm going to want to get in on that and want you to work on my project, because my project will probably be more successful with an artist like you. I wanted to throw a shout out to a couple of my former students at UVU, and basically give them a compliment that they probably don't know is coming. And that goes to Rachel Everett and Trevor Downs. When I went into class last year and had them in class, one of them, Rachel, had already started and finished a Kickstarter project that was successfully funded for a comic that she was working on. Trevor was already working on his own comics, and both of them had a pretty decent showing at a really decent showing at Salt Lake City Comic-Con. And so right away I see these two, and I'm like, the purpose of me talking about these guys is not to put anyone else down. And I know that there's a lot of other students I could talk about. These two just came to mind because they were really current. But we're all in different levels. We're all in different places, right? when I first saw them in class and saw what they were working on and saw what they were capable of and saw what they were doing, I knew that they were much higher on the food chain and had a much greater chance of success as an artist than a lot of the other students in class, simply for the fact that they were willing to do something without any guarantee of any financial return. And that takes guts. That takes it takes strength, and it says something about your character that without that, you just don't have that it just wouldn't say that. So if I were a betting person, if I were an art director and someone said, in this strange universe said, you have to pick someone from this class to start and finish a project that you're going to manage and that you're going to sell, I mean, I know who I would choose, just simply for the fact that they're already out there working. It shows an art director that you're already working. It's easier to hire somebody that's in motion than someone who's sitting around waiting for the phone to ring or waiting for the email. So a few words of caution before I end this one. Isn't it funny that I always end up like right around the half-hour mark? I find that really interesting, that it's like, anyway, observations about my YouTube channel that probably should have been edited out. So caution. Number one, we're constantly training ourselves. We're training ourselves to do good. We're training ourselves to do bad. We're constantly in training. We're training our minds. You need to start small. If you've never done a project before, one of the worst things you can do is to start a big project and fail to ship. Now, there's two types of failure. There's failure that you can control and failure that you can't control. The failure you can control is, I set a goal to start this project, and this is what it entails right here, and this is the finished date, and I'm going to be finished by this date, and I'm going to have all this stuff done. You can control that. What you can't control is how people respond to that project. So the first kind of failure is bad failure. The second kind of failure is good failure. You want to have good failure. Start small. Start with something like, I'm going to make, and this is just off the top of my head because I haven't really thought about this, but I'm going to make the ace, king, queen, and jack of spades in a children's book style, or in like My Little Pony style, or something weird, right? Just to have a project, just to say, hey, I wanted to make this project, and you might not even have to announce it as a project. You might just do it and start to share it on social media and start to share your sketches, and people can say, oh, that's going to be really cool. Look at that. I can't wait to see what the ace looks like, or I can't wait to see what the queen looks like. Because it's sequential and it's a project, right? Start small. The worst thing you can do is fail, and you'll train yourself that, you know what? I tried to make a project like Will Terry said, but I failed. That was painful, and I don't want to do that again. Nobody likes pain, and we typically try to avoid things in life that are painful. So you don't want to teach yourself that projects are painful. Okay, so teach yourself that you can accomplish things. And I can't remember if I've shared this here on YouTube before. If I have, and you've heard this story, bear with me. But when I was 11, I was a Boy Scout, and I was picked by the older scouts to go for my Paul Bunyan Award, which is, you got to chop down this tree, and it was, now I remember it being about that big around, maybe like 8 inches around, but it probably was smaller. But I had to chop down the tree. I had to cut a 4-foot section out of it, and then I had to split that 4-foot section, and then I had to split both of those sections, so I had to quarter it. And when they picked me to take this axe, I mean, I was 11 years old. I didn't know if I could do it or not, but they were like, no, you got this. You can do it. They were very encouraging, and they wanted me to succeed, these older scouts. And so they stayed with me for like 2 hours. When I was done, my hands, I had made calluses or blisters, and those had all popped. And I tried putting Band-Aids on there. They got some Band-Aids and stuff, and the Band-Aids were coming off, and they were like, no, you can do it. And I was almost in tears because my hands hurt so bad. But I did it. And what that trained me to do was, more and more hard things. And that's why I actually love the scouting program, because I learned so many lessons doing that. And those little things along the way, they train you to do more, and to the point where I climbed a mountain in the wintertime when I was in college, and camped on top. And it was like 6 feet of snow up there, and we had to use snowshoes. And it was the hardest thing. We started at 6 in the morning, and we didn't get to camp until dark. And we were hiking all day in the snow. And I went through, I didn't know what was going on with my body, but I had depleted myself of everything. And I basically was completely spent, but we just zombied on to the top, and we actually got there. And from then on, I knew I could climb that mountain in the wintertime. It's just like something in your mind, like, well, if I have to climb that mountain in the wintertime, I know I can. You need those kinds of experiences, both physical and project-oriented, art-oriented. I mean, there are tasks that are monumental. I mean, I worked on a painting once that took me 120 hours, and I thought I could never work that long on a painting. And once I finished it, then working that long on paintings after that was just easy. It's really funny, and it's funny, like, for you game players, when you're playing games that have different levels, and you get to that level that's like, you think it's just impossible. It's just going to be, you're never going to get through it. And then when you break through it, if you do it the second time, you just fly right through it. And you're like, why did I think this was that hard? And it's because there's a big part of it that's mental. And if you don't train yourself to do things small and work your way up, you're going to do the reverse. You're going to train yourself that you can't do it. When you do have those good failures, and the good failures, like I mentioned, are when you put your project online and people don't respond to it, when people ignore it, that's the worst, right? People ignore it and nothing happens. Those kinds of failures are going to be hard. They're going to be really hard to take, because you spend a lot of time, and you feel like time is value. Time is not value. Time is time. Time is work. Time is effort. But time is not necessarily value, right? So just because you spend a lot of time on something doesn't mean that there's value there. And when people don't see value, they're not going to share it. They're not going to like it. And you shouldn't waste time trying to get them to share it and like it and push it out there. They don't like it. That means it's not good. Or you haven't found the right group of people. So you need to make sure. But I mean, in general, when things are put out there on Facebook, on Twitter, on your social media accounts, if they're good, they're going to get more likes and shares than others. And you should know, basically, if you've been sharing your artwork on Instagram, on these social media sites, you should have a baseline for about how many likes and how many hearts you get and stuff, right? So if your average baseline is, I get 20 likes, 20 likes, 20 likes, 20 likes, 25, 15, 20. Okay. When you're doing this project, if you're not getting more than that, if it's not growing and building, then that probably means you're not, you're getting those normal people who just are like, yeah, I like that because that's my friend. But you're not really branching out of that. You're not getting other people who don't know you to also click like on it. And as a side note, when I was working on my little book, I was constantly sharing the artwork, sharing the progress, sharing each and every little character as they came out. And, when someone new would hit the project, I'd get a lot more inquiries. Oh, what's this for? What are you doing with it? And then by then, once I was, 25%, 30%, 50% in, the people that were already following the project, the people that were already supporting it, would go ahead and explain for me and tell new people, hey, this is what he's doing. He's going to be doing this, that, and the other. And actually, when I launched the fact that I was going to be making a book out of it, that's when people got really excited and they started sharing it even more and more. Well, then an art director saw it at Penguin Publishers, and I got contacted, and I've talked about this on the vlog before. Hey, would you be interested in illustrating this children's book written by Marjorie Kyler? And I said, sure, send it along. And then they said, well, they want to see the same style of artwork. Because, I kind of have two different styles. I have the really super colorful style, And then I have this more cross-hatched pencil-looking style with very limited color. And they were very adamant, we want this limited style, we want this. And so what you're seeing now are some sketches, some finished drawings from that are going to go into the book that are a direct result of starting a project. So even though I'm an established illustrator, art directors are still looking for something new, unique, and fresh. And these ones weren't seeing it in my old portfolio work. And that's still portfolio work that I when I say old, I mean stuff that I was doing prior to this project. But I still love working in that style, but I also love working in this new style with limited color. It's just another thing that I can do. But this is case in point why I feel so strongly about creating projects. It really can attract a job that will come in direct response from the project that you're doing. So anyway, if you can't get people to share and like it, that probably means that you need to move to the next project. You're not getting their attention with that one. It's time to cut and run and start something new. That's the life of an artist. If you find, any of the artists that you really admire, if you dig back in their past, they weren't always great artists. They weren't always doing amazing work. They weren't always getting a lot of attention. They have tons of failures. What you can learn from other artists more than anything is how they persevered through their failures. You take somebody like a John Lasseter who started Pixar. He was fired. He got fired from Disney as an animator because he was spending all of his time saying, look, this digital stuff is going to be great. Digital animation is going to make a big splash. There's something there. We got to be looking at it. And they're like, you know what? Get out of here. We don't want you anymore. And he could have quit. He could have been one of those people that's like, yeah, I used to work at Disney. It was awesome. But instead he didn't let that stop him. And there are a ton of artists that have tons of failure stories. Every artist that's great has had to deal with a lot of failures, but they persevere. So start that next project, get going. Projects on top of portfolios is really where you need to be, because that's pretty much the only way you're going to get attention these days, unless your artwork is so amazing that every time you share a piece it gets shared a million times. That's not going to happen for most of us. And most of the people that have that amazing art kind of got there because they also did some projects along the way, and they also got hired and they got to cut their teeth working for someone or working on these other projects. Anyway, I hope you like this video. Do not subscribe unless you want to see more stuff like this, and I'll see you on my next video.